Hello everybody! So the other day I realized that I haven't made a Swiss video in a whole while, so I decided that I should probably, get to making that. But before I get into that though, are you new to my channel? Welcome! My name is Janice and I make videos talking about languages, differences in languages. I make videos talking about me learning Korean. I make videos about Switzerland and what's it like living there. I've made videos talking about Korea and what's it like living there. I've made videos talking about differences in German versus Swiss German. If any or all of that sounds interesting to you, why not stick around? In every single language, I feel like there is at least one or two words that are not very easily translatable into other languages. Whether it describes a feeling or social awareness, everything can kind of be boiled down into one word in this one language, but needs various other words to describe this one thing in a different language. For example, I find awkward to be a very strange word to have to translate into, for example, German. Because you can say unangenehm, but unangenehm more kind of feels like uncomfortable. And whereas an uncomfortable handshake can happen, it's not the same kind of feeling as an awkward handshake. This also works in Korean. For example, the word nunchi is very difficult to translate into English. It sort of describes social awareness, social cues. I feel like the best way to describe nunchi into English would be vibes. But that doesn't really describe anything. So what is nunchi? Nunchi to me was explained in the way that if you are walking with a friend and they are physically like, ooh, it's kind of cold, but they're not saying anything, but they're like doing all the motions of being cold, and you give them your jacket, that's good nunchi. Or if you are sitting at a dinner table and everybody's chatting, everybody's fine, but then one person is kind of like just dozing off and spacing out and kind of, like they're not really in the conversation. And you approach them and you're like, hey, are you okay? And you notice the fact that they're like, in a different headspace. That's good nunchi. Now, what does all of this have to do with Swiss German? I'm gonna be telling you today 10 Swiss words that kind of only exist in the Swiss language. Meaning that I will need different words to explain these things in a different language. There is not a one-to-one translation purpose. For example, tree and Baum. That can be very easily translated. Tree is Baum, Baum is tree. Very easy to translate. However, these words that I'm going to be telling you, they're not as easily translated. You either need more than one word, or you kind of have to explain a whole situation around it to be able to understand this word. You get it? Okay, let's go. I feel like we all have somebody in our lives that is just constantly cold. This person, no matter how many degrees it is outside, no matter how warm it is, no matter how sunny, no matter how freaking humid it is, they are always cold. This person is always cold, always has to carry a jacket, is just always complaining that it's cold. This, in Swiss German, we would call a fröhlich. Fröhlich is sort of derived from the German word for being cold or being very cold, which is frieren. It doesn't describe being cold, it describes a person who is constantly cold. As I said, no matter how warm it is outside, they are always cold. Next up is probably one of my favorite words in Swiss German, and it makes me very sad that there are no equivalents in any other languages that I know of, which is the word moll. See, I don't know how to describe it, but it's a little bit like saying, actually, yes, it does. That's what it describes. In a kind of like sassy, talking back sort of way. For a little example dialogue here. Du bist dumm. Nein, moll. This one can be very useful, especially paired with doch, meaning the same thing basically. Doch and moll are kind of the same thing. It can be very useful to be paired together, like doch moll. So one person will say doch, the other person will say moll, and then you can also say doch moll or moll doch. Swiss German. Doch moll, ja, doch, moll, ja, moll doch, ja. Moll doch, ja. The next word has two meanings. It can either mean a person who grew up in the countryside or lives in the countryside, or a very conservative person. The word to describe this kind of person is called bünzli. Bünzli. For example, a Swiss person who will very excitedly invite you to their village get-together can be very much described as a bünzli. Those parties are not parties, they are awkward. Like, why are you partying with your neighbors? And just your neighbors? These kinds of town or village festival party get-togethers are kind of like every single age group is represented, the music always kind of sucks, and like there's nothing much to do. Another example for a bünzli would be somebody who is very much in love with Switzerland, thinks it's the best country, and just overall just thinks every other country is terrible and Switzerland is like the ideal country. Bit of a bünzli. Next up is a word that I also very much miss in the English language, or even just in German, which is Tüpfelschießer. Somebody who is a Tüpfelschießer describes a person who is very meticulous and very detail-oriented to like the littlest, minutest degree. For example, in Switzerland, it is common that you have to keep paper in a specific little stack. You have to tie it in a knot and then you put it outside once or twice a month so that the government can come and pick it up and do the recycling for you. Now, some people kind of get lazy with tying their knot very correctly or neatly, so sometimes the packages are a little bit messy. That's okay, because the government doesn't care. It's gonna get recycled anyway. But a diepvriesgießer would care so much. They would make sure that every single paper is in the exact same like form or shape. Diepvriesgießer will get very detail oriented in places where it really doesn't matter. Swiss bureaucracy is very diepvriesgießerisch. Perfectionist has kind of a positive and negative tone to it, like you can say it either way. Diepvriesgießer is basically just the negative one. Diepvlie means little dot and Schießer means shitter. I loved Swiss German. With that combination of like Diepvlie and Schießer, you can kind of tell that this does not have a positive connotation to it. It's not perfectionist, where you can say, oh, you know, I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to my work, meaning that you will have all of your deadlines set on time. Diepvriesgießer get so stressed out about the fact that it's not perfect yet that they will overwork themselves and ultimately probably cry because one little full stop was missing in the entire like 300-page essay. Diepvriesgießer. Snoenie is a snack that you will eat at 9 a.m. So usually Swiss people will start work at 8 a.m. and work until 5 p.m. Normally people will eat breakfast very early as soon as they wake up, and then they will go to work at 8 a.m. However, people usually sort of get hungry between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., which is when lunchtime is happening. So Swiss people created a little like thing around it and called it Snoenie. Noenie is 9 o'clock and the Z kind of, I don't know, it makes it a noun, I guess. A little snack to eat at 9 a.m. The next one has a lot to do with the last one, which is Zvieri, Snoenie. Between like 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. when you get off of work, you kind of want a little bit of a snack. You're gonna get hungry throughout the day. Swiss people are diepvriesgießer. They're literally telling you like, this is when you have to eat snacks. It's 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Snoenie, a 9 a.m. snack. Zvieri, a 4 p.m. snack. The next three words are kind of more in the rude category. What do you think somebody is trying to say when they're calling somebody a loli? Loli describes a person who's a little bit of a dumbass. Kind of clumsy, kind of stupid, kind of airheaded. That's the kind of general gist of what loli means. I find it fun to say. It's kind of not a rude way of saying you're a dumbass. It's kind of more like a silly way. You could call your child a little bit of a loli if he keeps like, I don't know, spilling tomato sauce all over himself while he eats. If your friend continuously makes spelling mistakes while texting, a little bit of a loli. The next word describes a person who is more of a smaller stature, who is kind of weak, kind of like wimpy, and doesn't want to be those things. They want to be more strong, they want to be like buff. A Swiss person would probably call that person a Lauch. Now, Lauch also means leak. However, Swiss German also has a meaning of you are a skinny kid who wants to be a big tough guy, but is not really working out. Hey man, de Philip gaat så hur lång is fitness, aber det är mina hur labbig us. What a Lauch. Another way of calling somebody kind of a dumbass, kind of a stupid person, less clumsy than loli, but kind of in the same vein of like airheaded stupid person, would be en lappi. What a lappi dittan. Let's say you're at the supermarket with your friend and you're both separately buying stuff. Your friend forgets their wallet at home and you're like, it's not meant as a insult, so to say. It's more like a, come on, dumbass. You're kind of telling your friend you're kind of a dumbass, but more in a loving sort of, not actually being terrible to them sort of way. In Switzerland, there's a very famous character who was mostly portrayed in children's books, but there's also audiobooks and audio plays with it. I'm not sure if audio plays is the correct word, but that's German to English. His name is Globby. He is a blue bird who wears red checkered pants and a little beret. He just kind of goes on adventures and learns a lot of things about the world. He's kind of seen as a Swiss child's staple of childhood. The reason why it's a Swiss only thing is because I feel like people outside of Switzerland don't know about Globby, don't know about his great adventures. Are there any words in your language that you think are very unique to your language that you don't think there are very good there are no good equivalents for in other languages? Let me know down in the comments. So this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can stick around till when I make a new one. I hope I drink lots of water, get lots of sleep, and this is the end. Bye!